Welcome back to another episode of Agency Edition. This is a toggle series for agency leaders who want to grow their business. Now today I'm talking to John Doherty. He's the founder and CEO at Editor Ninja. Since launching roughly 2 years ago, John has scaled the agency in his own words, a mid to higher six-figure revenue agency. And he's done it all while keeping an incredibly lean team. Now, the whole reason I wanted to interview John today for this episode was because of this LinkedIn post, where he made an argument for a more modern, remote-first approach to staffing an agency with fractional hires. Instead of building out a full-time team early on, John has leaned into a fractional model, which he says has allowed Editor Ninja to protect margins and scale without risk. We also talked about how Editor Ninja's hourly payment model helps protect margins and keep projects profitable, and the major advantages of having a global on-demand talent pool on speed dial. Here is my interview with John Doherty.
My name is John Doherty. I am a Denver, Colorado-based agency entrepreneur. So I've built a few agencies in my day, worked at a few agencies in my day, worked in-house. So I was originally a marketer. I was originally a writer and then a web developer and then a marketer and now an entrepreneur. So I did SEO and content for a long time, agency side, in-house, and then as a consultant, once I went out on my own, almost 10 years ago, 9.5 years ago. In the last 9.5 years, I built a company called Credo, which did lead generation for marketing agencies, a little bit of development and design in there as well, like connecting leads with those agencies. I was fortunate enough to sell that about 2.5 years ago in September of 2022 to a small private equity firm. And then I started working full time on Editor Ninja. So what Editor Ninja is we're a content editing and writing company. So I hesitate to call it an agency, but we're an agency, service, productized service, whatever you want to call it. Basically, we come alongside mostly B2B brands and marketing agencies to help them produce better content, whether they're writing content, and then our team of editors is kind of coming in and editing it for them to upgrade the quality, make it clear what they're trying to say, make it basically perform better once it's out there into the world. We also write SEO focused B2B blog content as well. And yeah, we've got a team of about 20 bodies working in the business, mostly contractors. I know we're talking about the fractional model today. And so we're a team of mostly contractors. There are 2 of us that are full time and everybody else is fractional. So we've been able to scale to, we're in the mid-high 6 figures of annual revenue. Let me put it that way. And we've done that in about 2 years.
Before we get into the fractional stuff, which is what we'll be talking about, I'm just intrigued about the focus of Editor Ninja. So you're doing basically 2 services, editing, and then you've got the content. Mm-hmm. And I'd love your thoughts around niching down, because a couple of agencies that are owners that I've interviewed so far have been, more on the fence about if niching that far down is a good strategy. But obviously you've decided to do these kind of 2 core services. Is that something that you decided on early on just through experience, or it's just you've been doing it and it's working, so that's where you're at?
Yeah, it was through experience. So when I started Credo, it's kind of like, we'll help you find any kind of marketing provider you're looking for. We don't care if it's a consultant, a freelancer, an agency, you need SEO or email marketing or whatever, we'll help you, right? And then I realized after we kind of got down after I worked on it for a little while, year or 2, I realized that projects were kind of coalescing around 4 key services: SEO, content marketing, Google Ads, Facebook ads. And so I focused our messaging down on that. We still had the other pages and that. I'm an SEO at heart. So we still had the pages for email marketing, whatever, but I basically focused our messaging around those 4 core services, and the business just blew up. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's a good lesson to learn. So with Editor Ninja, the original idea was basically to be the design pickle of content editing. So design pickles, on-demand graphic design. And interestingly though, they've expanded into they'll do motion graphics and they'll do video and all that sort of stuff now, but they were just at the start, they were graphic design for Facebook ads. It's what it was. And they've since expanded. So we started as just editing. And honestly, we've expanded a bit as well, because we started with just editing, and that got us to, I don't know, 20,000 a month in revenue, something like that. But churn was high, and we weren't quite me, and just didn't have the kind of the crazy lead influx that other companies have had in kind of other offerings. And I basically said, I told our head of operations, I was this was about a year ago, I'm we're not going to layer on a writing offering for probably about another year. I was until we're around $1 million in revenue or something like that a year. And then over the next few weeks, I proceeded to lose 3 deals that in total have been worth about $250,000 because we didn't write content. So I'm like, all right, fine. We're layering on a writing offering. So we just layered on human writing. And then people were asking us about AI content and kind of getting it cheaper. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that until like I'm proud of the output. And we would put our byline under it, right? That we wrote it. And then happened to hire a guy who, find and hire a guy who has been working with generative AI for 6 years now, 5, 6 years now, like the
Hmm.
original open AI, basically.
Early adopter.
And so, yeah, so we've layered it on, and now we're, kind of looking at like how do we kind of serve kind of the fuller like content production like
Hmm.
suite, which I mean, the more content we can produce, more good content we can help people write, we can write for them or help them write or whatever, then that's also going to be more editing work. So it kind of spins the wheel faster. So I'm a big fan of like kind of starting small and really nailing from the operational side how you deliver work. Because productization is all about operations and how you deliver work, not necessarily how you price it and what you offer. So people think productization is just like one thing to one customer, like that kind of thing. And I don't believe that that's true. It's basically how do you deliver the same level of quality at scale? So, we've been able to go from 100,000 words a month to 1,000,000+ words a month edited basically with a very small team because we nailed the operations. And then now we can like layer on these other like services that people need, as add-ons or core offerings or whatever, kind of like have different ones that we can like bring in. But we're not like going and building someone a website, we're staying in like the content production like lane, which is a niche, right? For sure. But there are things that make sense to kind of add on as opposed to like, we're going to go run your Facebook ads for you now, right? Which is
Yeah.
just like not what we do.
And when you're like something comes onto your lap, like you're either losing deals or customers are asking for it, and you're like, "Oh, we don't really do that." How are you testing that? Are you offering it kind of like upsell to current clients and kind of like testing the waters there, or are you just like, we think it's going to work, let's launch this thing?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back to what I was just saying about the kinds of things that we decide to add on, is this part of the core thing that we offer, aka content production, or is it not, right? Someone comes like, hey, can you also run our Facebook ads, or can you write Facebook ad copy? I'm like, oh, like we're really focused on like editorial content, like we can proofread it if they're already creating it, but like that's not something that we do at this point. Or if they're like, build me a website, like, sorry, we have partners that we can like refer you to. And usually, so the way I like to do it, I don't even have a name for it, but I kind of have this approach where like if someone asks me for something once, I'm like, that's interesting, but like we don't do that. They asked me a second time and I'm like, it's interesting. I'm just going to note that and like pay attention a little bit more to this and kind of start thinking about what it could look like. And then it's hilarious. Invariably within a couple of days after that, a third person asked me for it. And I'm like, all right, fine. let's see what this looks like. And then I could take it to my team and take my head of ops. I'm like, hey, we've been being asked for this. Is this something that we think that we should do? Who would deliver? Do we have someone who could deliver it? If not, who would we need to hire, right? And kind of like work out the business side of it. But I kind of let the market drive like what it is that we're looking for. I want to sell to people what it is that they want to buy, as opposed to trying to convince them to buy something that they don't really want.
Yeah.
It just makes everything a lot easier.
Yeah, your approach, even when you were talking through, you kind of sticking to your lane, kind of, I guess, is how you describe it. It's really interesting because your answer kind of mirrors an answer that I got from Tom Watley. He runs Grizzle. I don't know if you know them.
I know
They're a
Grizzle.
content marketing
Yeah, I've heard of
agency.
Grizzle.
But
Yeah.
And he basically has the same approach. You can get asked for something horizontally that might be outside of your wheelhouse, but you feel like you kind of have to add it on. But if you can stick in your lane vertically, aka content marketing, maybe just layering things on, it's actually, how did he describe it? Kind of like a minimum MVP almost, it's like a lot less risk because you're going to be able to deliver. So it's just interesting. Your approach sounds pretty similar.
Yeah, and I think like even going a higher level, it's like what is kind of the broader story of your agency of like why you exist? Because like we'll get people, we do some like SEO optimization, and like any real SEO that listens to this is going to cringe that I just said that, but like I don't have a better term for it. It's like when people say like we're going to add on the SEO, I'm like, what is the SEO? I did it for 15 years. It's just like I don't. It hurts my brain, but anyways, we do some like keyword optimization basically, right? But then we'll get people being like, well, but can you also audit my website for like SEO friendliness? And I'm like, no.
No.
Like our thing is content. It's like content production, marketing content, like getting your message out into the world. It's not web development. It's not outreach. It's not PR. It's not like that sort of stuff. We're not like doing the distribution of your content, right? Like for us, it's content marketing. So it's not SEO. It's not email marketing, all those things. Though the content also touches those things, but like we're not going to run your email campaigns for you or teach you how to build your list or something like that. If you're writing that content, sure, we'll edit it, we'll review it, and we'll like tighten it up and like that sort of stuff. But like, but yeah, at the end of the day, like we're focused on like content, and we're a content production service. And so like we're not an SEO agency, we're not an email marketing agency, we're not a web development agency, even though content kind of requires all of those things, or all those things require content. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship. Like our core is that deep, like we're in the content marketing space.
I guess in your case, having those parameters is like essential in a way. So you're not getting, trying to chase after the next shiny little object. Having those clear parameters would, I assume, make it easy for you to say, we don't do that, rather than,
100%.
Maybe.
Yeah. And also when like new things come up, like for example, I sold my last business in September of 2022. I started working full-time on Editor Ninja in mid-January of 2023. So I took about a quarter off. And what happened in those 3 months? Smack dab in the middle, ChatGPT launched. So like AI changed the game, right? Like I'm like, shoot, I just sold this cash cow business and moving on to this new thing, which I really want to work on. But like the premise that I started this thing under might not be viable for super long, right? And I was actually completely right. And like I had people asking me like, what do you think AI is going to do to content? And this is like January of 23. And I had a prediction that came true. But
what was it?
Yeah, but also, well, basically the prediction was like, right now, no one knows. But I think within like 3 to 6 months, people right now, all the like innovators, I forget the name of the book, but it basically talks about like a parabola of like innovators, early adopters, late adopters, that sort of thing. And I was like, right now the innovators are like playing around with it. No one really knows what it is. Within 3 to 6 months, we're going to start seeing a little bit broader adoption, and people are going to start figuring out some interesting use cases. And 12 months from now, there are going to be some really interesting use cases. We're also going to pull back on some. Like we're going to realize that like you can't just like crank out 1,000 AI generated blog posts and it's going to rank and it's going to drive you traffic forever. People would do that and their traffic went up and then it dropped, right? And I was like, yep, was absolutely right on that, because I knew Google was gonna penalize that, for lack of a better term. It's like, but we're going to find some really interesting use cases, and I'm interested in how like my editors and our editing service can basically come alongside AI and use AI or help people use AI better, so that, and then us basically applying the human layer, that AI content can be basically just as good, but you can produce it a lot cheaper. And so you're just finding more efficiencies.
Yeah. I guess that kind of leads us on to, before we get into your team setup and things like that, an interesting question about how you're using AI, either with customer facing services or just in the back end operationally. Are you using it at all?
A little bit. We create content using AI. So we have an AI generated kind of SEO blogging service, but it's heavily worked with by humans as well. So we use a tool called Brandwell, formerly Content at Scale. So we use that for generating the content, but we kind of take it like section by section. And then we have a human writer work with it to basically like heavily developmentally like edit it. And then we put it through our copy editing and proofreading layer as well. So 2 humans are working with the output before it even goes back to the customer. And we're just getting better over time at prompts and removing the AI language and, all that sort of stuff. So there's that. And then there's some other just like efficiencies I found. For example, we have a Spanish editing offering. And so we target US and Mexico, like in those ads and such. And so we'll get people submitting inquiries in Spanish. I am the salesperson. I speak okay Spanish, but I was like finding myself kind of going and taking what people were writing about what they were looking for, putting it into Google Translate to try to understand it. And then I realized that basically our form software has an OpenAI integration. And so I have it automatically translate the content from Spanish to English before I even get the inquiry. So I can just go and read the English and understand exactly what they're looking for, see if it's legit. And if it is, then I loop in one of our Spanish editors. So there's some efficiencies like that we found. But we're not like using AI to do like an initial edit and like that sort of stuff yet. We've played with it. It's just not quite there. And it actually was adding more work rather than less work. And so it was an efficiency. So we're not going to do it.
Yeah. And apart from the Spanish translation, are you using it for anything else in the back end of the business? Just now, anything that you've experimented with, or?
Yeah, I've used it for some like analysis of like finances and expenses and like that sort of stuff. It's like I'm quite good at Google Sheets or Excel or whatever you want to call it, but just being able to like add in a doc, add in a spreadsheet, upload a CSV or whatever, and then like ask it questions, and then of course like double checking it right in the back end. But like I've found AI does very little like hallucination and making up of stuff with that stuff. So that's helped me kind of be more efficient, with
Nice.
with
So,
with the lot.
just for example, you might maybe get your forecast for the next 6 months and you might just be asking it, which projects were viable or margins, or kind of what does that look like when you've been testing it out?
Margins is one, though I'm kind of calculating that like within our kind of weekly and monthly like reporting that we do, but it's more like, what's an example of something that I did recently? One thing that I had to do was I took like a list of leads, and I was basically like lead name, website, the person's title, like that sort of stuff, and basically had it. And it was basically like, can you break down like what percentage of these are B2B, what percentage of these are senior versus junior titles, like that sort of stuff. And then I could also like cross reference. I think I had like whether it was closed or won or whatever. It was basically like, you should target heads of content at like in-house or at marketing agencies that are focused on B2B and doing over $3 million a year in revenue.
Right.
I'm like, okay, thank you.
Little ICP
There's
helper.
our ICP. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just like that analysis that like I could do myself and just scroll and kind of like, little finger in the air, like get an idea, but AI did it for me and made it much, much simpler. So
yeah, I guess if there's kind of patterns already that a human would be able to pick up on, in a couple of hours, and it can do it in 5 minutes. I mean, that kind of stuff, like you said, it doesn't really have room to hallucinate, right? Because you're not asking it to do some creative lift or something like that. It's just the data inputs and it's just crawling. So yeah, I found
exactly
like
right.
when you're using AI for data analysis and to pull patterns out of like specific spreadsheets and numbers and things, it's like it never spits out a wrong answer if the prompt's like tightened up. So
Sure.
yeah, that's just why I was asking about how you're using it in the back end, because I'm sure once, more agency owners and operational people get a little bit more comfortable with using it, I think it's going to be able to just do the reporting and the analysis and the forecasting in that so much quicker. Not necessarily better than a human, but just quicker, right?
Yeah, it's not necessarily about better. It's about like just those like time efficiencies.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of SEO agencies that are basically like, in the past, like the way you do keyword research is you go and you look up a bunch of competitors and you kind of take their keywords and like dump it all together. So like, but now you can take that and basically like look at all these like different sheets and pull out the keywords that are in common. And then group them together. And then you can go through and do like the final, it kind of gets you like 80-90% of the way there.
Yeah.
And then the final 10-20% is where like the real like human insight and like pattern matching and experience really comes in, right? And then you can look at it and be like, yeah, let's move that group around, or like I want to break this one out and I have like 2 pages instead of 1 page, like that sort of stuff. I disagree with what AI said here just from my experience, but it takes care of that like 8 hours of analysis, right?
Yeah.
It just does it for you in like 10 minutes, just like a little bit of prompting. So like you're still doing it, but it's 10 minutes as opposed to 8 hours. And then you can just get to those results so much faster, right? Which increases operational efficiency. You can sell in more, more clients. You can deliver more work to more clients, and just as good as, if not better work, because like there's the humans are getting tired doing all this analysis, right? You don't have to hire more junior people. So like you're operationally, less heavy, like all of that stuff can come into play.
Yeah, it's definitely like super interesting. I'm sure, in the next 12 months, if I asked you that this time next year, you'd have like 20 different things you're using it for. So yeah, it's super interesting. All right, let's switch gears. 20 employees, you said, or 20 people working at Editor Ninja. What's kind of your breakdown between fractional and FTEs?
2 full-time, the rest are fractional.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what are your hires that you've got? An operational manager, you said?
Yeah. So it's me, and then we have a head of operations who was one of our first editors, was our first lead editor, was my executive assistant at my last agency. And so she's kind of grown up, over the last few years, like professionally with me. So yeah, it's her and I that are full-time. And then we have 2 admins. So Sophia has an admin on her side, who ironically and hilariously was my executive assistant. So Sophia is our head of operations. Her now admin / assistant was my assistant that hired Sophia as my assistant. So I was working with Rose. Rose was leaving. She hired Sophia. And then Sophia's kept working with me, and then we rehired Rose, and she now works for Sophia. So it's fun, like keeping good people around and having good people come back. And then I've Bennett on my side, so he helps me out with like sales, marketing, like admin stuff, and there's also like manages my inbox, manages my calendar and scheduling and like that sort of stuff. And then everyone else, and we have a couple of lead editors who are basically like senior editors have kind of grown up with us, but they handle more like operations and some light account management and that sort of stuff. And then we have a dozen or so editors, 12, 13, 14 editors, and a couple writers, but they're all, fractional 10 to 15, 20 hours a week sort of thing. So some of them are like, and if we basically our line is like from a contractor to part time is like, do we have specific hours that they need to work? Like basically, are there shifts, or can they do work whenever they want to, or whenever they can? So
And
if we
you
define it,
have,
yeah,
sorry, you have people that are working on an hourly rate?
we do. Yep.
Okay. And how are you like managing that from an operational perspective? If people are on, some people are part-time, some people are an hourly rate, and obviously you've got your full-time as well, your head of operations. So what does that look
Yep.
like in terms of like a management perspective?
So we have a big spreadsheet. I'm kind of joking, kind of not. So we have a couple of different models, and basically with every service that we launch, I basically look at like, okay, what do I think I can what do I think I can sell this for, and then basically what can we afford to pay someone, right, to do the thing. So for every AI generated article that Sam writes, for example, he gets paid. I charge Y, he gets paid X, right? And so when we go to run payroll every 2 weeks, for all of our contractors, we basically look at like, all right, how many AI generated articles did Sam write? How many human written articles did he write? Right, because it's different like pay rates for those, and then that's basically how we pay them. And then for editors, like the dedicated editors that basically are working, like we're paying hourly because it's basically kind of a placement model with clients, then they get paid X per hour. But if they're like editing through our like on demand service, which we still have, kind of the design pickle-esque service, they get paid a different amount for per amount of words edited. So we kind of have like 4 or 5 different like ways that people get paid, and have like a doc built out for everybody. And then we just kind of plug in numbers and it spits out how much they should get paid.
I'm just interested because it's like that's quite a lot of moving parts. I mean, I
Mhm.
know that what do you got 15 freelancers or
Yep.
part-timers that you've got, still quite a lot of moving parts and like different rates, right? Whether you're
Mhm.
selling the hourly service or kind of the more retainer model.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
what does that look like if I'm an editor at Editor Ninja?
Yeah.
What does my kind of back end look like? Am I submitting timesheets? Do I have access to the master spreadsheet? Like, what does that look like to make sure that everything's accurate, everything's being billed accurately, your clients know
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah. It's a good question. So, our clients don't really know what their editor is getting paid. We're not transparent about that to them, not for any real reason, just it's never come up. And, it's kind of like, would like, I don't know what you make, right? I mean, I'm not a type of customer, but like, I don't know what you make. It doesn't matter, as long as like so for like our clients, it's like, is the work getting done well? Is our editor sticking around? Right. And we don't have like churn issues. We don't have editors quitting. So that's all good. Editors have, full access to their history of like how much they've worked, how many hours they've done, how many words they've edited, like that sort of thing. So they can check that if they want to. So there's that side. So they're fully like cognizant of that, and they basically know like, if it's a dedicated editor project, they're getting paid by the hour and they're tracking their time. And if it's a on demand customer, like kind of coming through our portal, they know they're getting paid X dollars per like Y words edited.
Nice.
And then we pay them automatically every 2 weeks. Like we're going to be running payroll today. So we pay them every 2 weeks. They don't have to like submit invoices or anything like that. They can obviously see the hours that they've done. And then our lead editors and our operations team have access obviously to like all of the editors and how much they worked. And we have a system for basically like, while they're tracking time, it's like I'm doing, I'm working for this client here, right? For client A, this time is for this hour is for this client, for client A, this hour is for client B, that sort of thing. So I will say one thing we don't do a great job of is then, well, we do track closely because we report to clients every week on the dedicated editor, like the
Mm-hmm.
hourly option, where basically they're buying a set of hours for the month, 10 hours,
Yeah.
20 hours, something like that. They can kind of use it, 1 week they might use 7 and 1 week they might use 3, but every Friday we're basically telling them, hey, you've used X hours of, you've used 7 of your 10 hours this month. You have 2 weeks left. Let me know if there's anything you want me to prioritize, and also, let John know if you want to add on, some more hours, like, until whatever date. So, but we're not looking at like they bought 20, but they're only using 17, like that sort of thing. We're not tracking that as closely as maybe we could be, but it's an iterative process building the business. So,
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like if you've got those alerts set up, or if you're aware that they've still got 2 weeks left, which is an
yep,
age if someone's got a content program going,
yep,
and they've only got 3 hours left in the bank, That's a
Yep.
neat little upsell opportunity
Mhm.
that you've created by just selling by the hour there.
Exactly. And it also means because we're reviewing it every week, and also our editors know that like, hey, you've got 20 hours, on this. And we've asked them like when they get within 5, just let Sophia and I know. And actually a number of our customers on that offering have basically permission to just go ahead and add on because they have to get budget, right? So they have to, but so they already have permission from their finance team to just add on another 5 hours if they need it, right?
Nice.
So we have one that they started at 10 and they had clearance for up to 15, and then they'd have to go ask for 5 more if they needed to go to 20. After that, after they hit the like 15 and then had to go to 20 for 3 months in a row, they upped their recurring whatever engagement to 15 and have clearance up to 20, and then they have to go back and ask for more. And so it just kind of like ascends them up and expands the project. So we have quite a few that do that as well.
I guess that's in a way, the fact that you're just tracking everything and kind of communicating to them, you kind of need to up this from what you originally thought. It's not that big of a push for them, I would imagine, internally either, that they
No,
need this. How
no,
much
it's not.
when you're tracking everything like that, how much does that feed back into your overall pricing model and how you're pricing everything? Is that something that you're taking into account? 2 hours to do X, this editor is charging us X, so therefore we need to charge Y to get a 50% margin or whatever you're aiming for.
It does, but more so it's not quite it's kind of the flip of that. So what I mean by that is like, so for example, we work with a lot of AI content. I mean, we were talking about AI a little bit ago, but when I first started working full time in this business, it was about 80% human written, or really 90% human written, 10% AI generated. Now it's like 70% AI generated and 30% human written.
Wow.
So it's like completely flipped. And so, I mean, also just as a side note, we're also seeing a lot of like former professional writers, like freelance writers, becoming editors. So like our value has just like gone up. Like people,
Yeah.
like a lot more editing is needed these days. But like we were kind of charging the same amount for AI editing, whether it was like kind of copy editing, proofreading, general like humanization, a little bit of cleanup versus like this piece needs to be like fully worked with, basically like a writer working with it. And basically I was like, we were looking at it like what our editors were getting paid. And I'm like, they're getting paid the same amount for like less work, for like lighter work versus heavier work. That just doesn't make sense. And so like I actually pulled out the like heavier kind of like in traditional writing, like developmental editing, structural, like reworking everything, pulled that out, gave it a higher price. And so now we kind of have 2 levels of offerings for AI content editing, and our editors get paid more for the heavier stuff than for like the copy editing and proofreading. It's the same thing that we had for human like written content at the start. We've just applied it to AI now. And really that's just to be fair to our people, because I really care about keeping good editors around. Like I said, we don't have churn, and I don't want churn. Because if you have churn and you have to be constantly recruiting, like it's a huge operational drag. It's a lot of time. There might be times where I can't sell in more projects because we don't have the people. Like it's just like retaining, like in this kind of business with a fractional business, you really, and full time as well, but like full time people leave less, I think, than freelancers and fractional people. You think people and agencies always think about client churn and minimizing client churn, right? If your churn is too high, it's really hard to grow the business. And that's when people are like, oh, I need more leads. It's like, no, you actually need to fix your churn. You have plenty of leads. You're just not able to outsell your churn because you're not delivering good enough of a product, right? It can be the same way on the talent side, that if people are constantly churning out, like you're going to reach a point where it doesn't matter how many more leads you have, you're not going to be able to handle them. You're not going to be able to sell in more work. And so therefore your business isn't going to grow. So I care a lot about keeping good people around.
I would almost imagine that's kind of heightened in your offering. And what I mean by that is editing is such a fragile part of this whole process. So I would imagine that, let's say you've got a really good editor in a fractional setting. I would imagine that losing an editor to a full-time role or another project or whatever is actually quite like denting to you in terms of like if they've worked with a client for a long time, they get to know their product and their tone of voice and all that kind of thing. So how hard is it for you to retain your fractional people when you don't have that safety net, I guess you would call it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I will say also that like one of the things that kind of unlocked growth in this business was every account that comes in, like dedicated editor is like, here's your person, right? Here's Ariel that is editing for you. And they're like connect with her directly and they get her into their systems. They work their, through their own Slack and whatever. We have a shared Slack channel set up. We have a shared Slack channel with every client that like the editors are in. But also we can message to people that like, even if you come in like to our on-demand offering, we're still setting up a shared Slack channel. You're still going to have direct access to your editors, like that sort of stuff. And it's going to be the same editors. And you have a primary and a secondary editor. So that's one way that we do it. So the primary editor gets, is the one that's primarily doing their work, handling all their content basically. But if they were to leave or go on vacation, something like that, we have a secondary editor who's already familiar with the style guide, has access to everything. They've been seeing all the communications, everything in Slack, so they can easily slot in. They can easily step in. And then we also have kind of an unofficial, like tertiary, like third editor as well, that then becomes the backup editor. So yeah, so that's worked out really well. I like having redundancy on redundancy on redundancy, just because like you just have to allow for people taking vacation or getting sick or something like that, which happens. So that's one way that we do it. Another way that we do it is basically like we we're basically we're signing a contract with every editor. We're asking them for basically a minimum amount of time every week, right? Which then rolls up like to monthly. We're also guaranteeing them a certain amount every week, even if we don't have work. Like we're still going to pay them X dollars per week just to be available.
I mean, that's pretty good.
Pretty good. It's worked out really, really, really well.
Right.
An old coach of mine gave me that tip, and like it's just made it super easy to retain people. To be completely honest with you, and it's like, and to be completely honest with you, Kimberly, it's a nominal amount. Like it's not that much money, but they know that like they're protected. They're good, and they're going to get something. And it's also really easy to hit that for us to give them that much work every single week. So, within a month, we might have like one or two that like 1 week had that minimum, but it's very rare. And then we do have like a clause in as well that like if we haven't had any work for them for 4 weeks, then we can put them on the bench, right? And like basically not pay them. We've never had to do that. I'm not saying we're not going to have to, but we have not had to do that to this point, just because I'm constantly out there generating leads, making sales. We're good at retaining customers, like that sort of thing. So that's worked out. That's worked out really, really well.
That's actually interesting because I was going to ask you how kind of the heavy bias towards fractional compared to in-house, how that helps protect the agency when there's a downturn or, the economy's not great or people are just a little bit hesitant to invest because internal budgets. So is that, apart from the clause, do you think fractional is helping kind of act as a defense mechanism for everything?
I mean, yeah, the business model is built around it. And so like I'm not bringing on this like crazy overhead that like, we have to that we have to support every single month because I have like 8 full-time people, like there are 2 of us full-time and then everyone else is fractional. And when there's more work, people get paid more. When there's less work, people get paid less, right? And so it kind of like protects the margins as well. And like we're never going to like if all of our clients fired us like tomorrow, which won't happen. I used to worry about that. All agency owners like or freelancers worry about that at the start, and then like it never happens. Eventually, you just accept that it's never going to happen. But like if that happened tomorrow, we still wouldn't go out of business because like all of a sudden my delivery costs go to basically zero. So it like the model very much protects us as well. And this is the way a lot of like productized services, kind of like the unlimited, on demand, whatever model you want to call it, kind of do it. So it's flexible for everyone.
Yeah. Is that kind of that mindset? Is that why you even chose to go down this route in the first place? Like it wasn't because you didn't want to bring people on or you didn't want to manage them. It was like a pure business perspective because, agencies, they can things can turn overnight, right?
Yeah.
So it was a pure kind of like, this is how we're going to go. We're going to see if it works for growth, keep everything lean. And then obviously it's worked, right?
See if we can retain people, see if like our clients are happy working with fractional people, and we're upfront with them. I'm like, all of our editors are part-time. Like they're fractional. Like we get, we know the time that we have for them. We wouldn't like put them with you if they didn't have the capacity, for it, all of that. And it's never been an issue. So there was that. I have no qualms at like, if we had, I don't care if we have 20 people or 200 people or 2,000 people. Like, I'm not one of these that's like, I don't want to grow too big. I'm like, I want to grow this thing as big as it wants to grow, and would love to have like a good sized business. But I also, so there is that. it was a purely like business thing. But also, so I learned this framework from a mentor, old coach of mine, Dan Martell. He has this saying that it's, I can't work with you till I work with you. So he always starts people off on like a test project, and then kind of gets them into like a, a shorter like 30-day period or something like that. And then basically like, kind of formalizes the agreement or whatever. So, and I love kind of growing people up through the organization. So Sophia was executive assistant and then like, was doing some other like ops stuff and then became the head of operations. Robbie, who's our senior lead editor, started off as like just general copy editor, proofreader. We realized he's good at operations. And so he started being like lead editor. And so kind of like, assigning work and reviewing work and like that sort of stuff. And then he's also good at account management. And so now he does more account management stuff. Right. So he's like gradually taking on more as, as like, I mean, the need is there and, as it's something that fits his skill set. Right. And I would love to bring him on full time at some point. Like he would be great. Right. But like starting as like a very part-time editor all the way up to that, like I love that progression because they learn to do things the way that we do them. So you're not having to like have them unlearn other ways, but also like they're so loyal. Like they're going to
Yeah.
stick with you forever if you've taken them, if they've gone from like super part-time, super fractional to like full-time working with you. Like, are they ever going to quit? Unless like we really F something up? No. Like they're staying with us forever. And that's just like so consistent, like in a business, like you
Yeah.
need that consistency.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think there is, I wouldn't call it a fear, but a hesitancy from agency owners to go down the fractional route? Because, I've interviewed a bunch of people now for this series, and some are fully fractional and then they hire from the fractional in-house, just like you've said. And then others are fully in-house. Everyone's doing 40 hours a week. That's what it is. So the first question is, do you think there's a hesitancy in the industry? And secondly, if there is, why?
Yes, I do think that there is a hesitancy. I think it is less than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see it. I mean, there's a reason why that like post that I put on LinkedIn, like people are resonating with it
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff. Because like some people, all the freelancers are like, yeah, it's fractional. And a lot of the agency owners are like, oh, I don't know. The traditional way of doing business is hiring people full-time in the office, right?
Yeah.
And I think the hesitancy is less like fractional versus full-time. It's more akin to the like remote versus in the office sort of thing.
Mm.
I think there are a lot of people that don't know how to manage when they can't see someone there in person and they don't trust that they're like doing their work. Versus like part of the reason I love it is like I live in Denver, Colorado. Sam is here. Our lead writer is here as well. He's the only other person in Colorado. We've met up twice in the 6 months that he's worked for us. Everyone else is spread around the country. Like I've met Sophia in person and a couple of our others as well, because a lot of our editors live near my parents back in Virginia on the East Coast. But like we're fully remote and like being able to go and take a walk in the middle of the day. They should be able to go and take a walk in the middle of the day. As long as their work's getting done, like I don't care. Are they work from a coffee shop? Are they work from home? Are they work from their friend's house? Are they in Hawaii? Are they in Europe? I don't care. As long as the work is getting done, right? But I've also been remote for 9.5 years now.
Mm.
So I think like people that come from the more traditional, they were in an office for 15, 20 years. Then they started their agency. That's what they know. So that's what they stick with. But like, I don't know. We were talking about this earlier that hiring full time is really risky for an agency, especially a smaller agency.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're at like, and I don't know where it flips because I haven't gotten a business there yet, but like probably somewhere in the like 1 to 3 million, you start needing kind of more like full time people. But I don't see it being on the delivery side. So even like if you have your core business people in, right, and maybe like a full time account manager and like something like that, like.
Mm-hmm.
I love the flexibility. I almost said flexibleness. I run an editing company. You think I'd have this word right? I love
I'll cut that bit out.
I leave that in. I love the flexibility of fractional on the talent side, on the delivery side, simply because like we can slot in the right people and there's never a point where I'm like, we don't have the right person. It's like if there's something that is needed, it's like they need editing, they need APA editing, but they have to have experience in whatever vertical.
Yeah.
We might not have that now, but I have a network of 500 people that have applied to work with us or have added their name to our like talent network. And I can go and query that and find a person and we can recruit them, But like if and even recruit them on the side from a full-time job, probably half the people that are like in our talent network have a full-time job as well. And they just like moonlight instead of freelancing to me is full-time. They're moonlighting. So like on the side, and they're going to be happy for that extra income,
For sure.
So like I love that, and having people in house full time does on the delivery side doesn't negate that as well, but it is a bit easier in that like that's just the way that we operate on that side of the business.
I think what your answer shows is there's two things. One, it keeps your kind of service flexible, right? If someone comes in with a specific need or that is still in your vertical, like we were talking about, you have a whole talent pool that you're able to fill from, right? For a minimal cost, you're not paying healthcare or office costs or any of that stuff. And the office thing is a whole other discussion because I think a
Yeah.
lot of that is driven because people have bought a building or renting
Mhm.
one. But
True.
anyway, we
Yep.
won't get
Yep.
into
They
that.
got into a 36-month lease, and yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it keeps, your offering flexible and lean. But also, you're right, like a lot of people will freelance on the side now, whether it's something that they've done and they've gone in house, but they still want to keep that kind of little engine running, whether they just want a little bit of extra income, like the flexibility is there, right? So
Yep.
it sounds like you figured out how to get it both working on both sides. But I do find it interesting that your one hire is head of operations. And that to me, that shows it's just so important to have like everything in the back end, just like ticking along super smoothly.
So important.
What does it look like to manage? I don't even know how many projects you would have going at one time, but like, what does it look like in the back end?
So yeah, it's probably I don't even know how many it is either. Probably somewhere in the like 30 to 40 at a time range.
Like
Every
clients
editor,
or projects?
yeah, clients, and yeah, we think about like accounts is what we think about, and every editor has 2 to 3, so
Right.
that about pencils out. But what does operations look like? So we have our own custom built system. I was telling you this before we started. We have
Mm-hmm.
our own custom built system that I built that basically like clients come in on our like on demand offering or on the writing offering. Dedicated editor happens outside, but we do have a page within the app for like every account, so the editor has access to that. They can see if they forget how many hours or something like that. They can go and they can look at it. They can add notes, that sort of thing. But like a client comes in, they add in like an editing request. So here's this blog article. It's 1,200 words. It's for this website. They have a way to like select their website, and then that shares the style guide and everything with the editor. They put in a brief for like what specifically they need done for that article. They have a default brief that they can define, and they can add on anything they want for that specific article. It's submitted in. Our lead editor, Robbie, or Ashley, who's our other lead editor, they review it, make sure we can basically just like make sure that like the word count is accurate, make sure we can access the document. Then they assign it to the editor. So it's kind of a queue system. So they assign it to the editor with a start date and a due date. Editor does their thing, sends it back to QA. So they just like update the status. It's like ready for editing, in editing, ready for QA. And then Robbie QAs it, cleans it, accepts all the edits, cleans it up, fixes any weird formatting things that Google Docs suggesting mode introduced, sends it back to the client.
Nice.
And they get an email notification that it's ready, linking them to both documents, the one with the edits and then the one with the edits cleaned up and any remaining editor comments. We call that their clean copy. They can basically work from. If they want to see the full like edit, history, they can look at the other one.
Okay. Super
That's basically how
transparent.
it goes. Yeah, super transparent. They can see their whole queue, what's in the queue, when's it coming back, who's editing it, all that stuff. They can rate it. They can give feedback within the system, all of that. They can also do it in Slack, in that shared Slack channel I mentioned earlier. But it's just a very like kind of tight system. And
Yeah.
how much work, how many documents they need per day, how many words they need per day, that kind of thing kind of determines what their subscription should be, what they're like, how much they should pay every month.
And how are you managing kind of like fractional capacity, like how much time or how much space people have for projects?
Yep. We have a big spreadsheet.
Love the
Basically,
spreadsheet.
it's like we have like a line for it's every client, and then like each week, how many words they need per week, and then it's who their editor is. If it's writing one, then who their writer is, and kind of how many pieces are expected that week. And then we have how many hours. Or basically like we expect about 2,000 words an hour, copy edited and proofread. So if they have 10 hours a week that they can give us, it's 20,000 words a week that they can
Okay.
edit. And then basically we have a what percent full are they, and whenever we need more capacity, so once the whole like group is 75 to 80% full, we go and basically recruit, and we're like, all right, we're going to need another editor soon.
Yeah, I was going
So
to
first thing,
ask how you're
yeah,
forecasting. Yeah.
so the first thing we do is we go and ask our existing editors if anyone has more time that they want to work, right?
Right.
And often someone will raise their hand and be like, "Yeah, I've got 5 more hours. I've got 10 more hours. Great."
Nice.
And so like we put that in, and then boom, their capacity, their percent full goes down and we can get them onto the next client or whatever. And then if no one has more capacity, which is rare, but if no one has more capacity, then basically we ask our editors if they have any friends who are editors who want work, and they refer their friends. Over half of our editors, probably 2/3 of our editors, graduated from the same program in Virginia, like dual master's program. So like they're friends and colleagues and that sort of thing. They act in like, they're all like Shakespeare experts. They act in like shows together and that kind of thing is pretty cool. Some of them babysit each other's kids. Like it's really, really cool. And so they just refer their friends. And so then they're getting to do more of the work that they like, and they're, and they're working with their friends.
Nice.
So it works out really well. I even found out recently that like there's a group of 3 or 4 of them that will go to a coffee shop and co-work together, like on Editor Ninja stuff.
Editor Ninja.
I had no idea.
Coffee edition.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm like, send me the bill for that. Like, I'll pay for everybody's coffee. That's fine. I need to get Sophia like a company credit card so you can just pay for everybody's coffee,
So
yeah,
so you're forecasting out the need there just off the spreadsheet. Is it like something that you kind of do annually or quarterly and think, oh, monthly, right?
Monthly, yeah, because stuff changes so fast,
Yeah,
and we might get a big client that needs 250,000 words a month edited, and then and we know like on average how long a client stays, like how many payments they make, because that's how many months they stay, because we bill monthly basically. I also know our average like revenue per client and our average lifetime gross profit, which is revenue minus basically editor like delivery costs. And so I have this whole like kind of model built out that I know exactly like how many clients we need to add, how many leads we need to get, how many clients we need to add, and how long they're going to stay. And then that, and then that basically projects out like what revenue we're going to do in that year, or like where will we be by the end of the year. So I'm very like spreadsheet and analytically minded.
Yeah.
I'm not a creative in that way. Yeah.
But does having that level of this is what I'm pretty confident is going to happen, and it's because we're tracking this, and this, to give you like just a more confidence like in your business in terms of just what's going to happen throughout the year? Because if you're tracking all that stuff, I think it must take away the whole, but if we lose this client, we're screwed basically.
Yeah, there's so much less anxiety. It's like, it's the numbers. And are we hitting our numbers? Are we not hitting our numbers? And if we're not, then like we need to shift up what we're doing. And if we are, let's keep on doing what we're doing until it stops working, right? And even do more of it.
Nice.
It completely alleviates that. Also, one thing to say is like I am very cognizant of not having too much of our revenue in any one account. So if an account gets over like 20% or 25% of our total revenue, that's risky for the business. So what I'll do then is I won't stop selling bigger ones, but basically what I try to do is I try to reduce the percentage of our total revenue that one account is. So it might mean selling into medium size, or one bigger one, which just like takes both of those down to like 17% or something like that, like whatever those numbers are. But I'm always trying to de-risk the business in that way. Right. And the only way to do that is to have a strong sales pipeline as well, which we have a strong lead pipeline and sales pipeline and all of that. We also have clients expanding. So like even just naturally, like that one client's percentage of total revenue is going to go down because other clients are expanding. So it's all, it's a weird like symbiotic relationship that like I don't try to control too much, but I know that it works. So I just kind of go with it. But but it gives me all of that insight, right?
Yeah.
And it's just easy to answer like, hey, can we afford to pay this? Yes, the business model supports it. That budget is there, right? Even at, the level that we're at, like we have budgets for each individual area. And so, one thing that we do to retain clients is when a new client comes on, we send them a care package, like a swag package in the mail. So it's like an Editor Ninja like mug and a Moleskine notebook and some red pens. I have one right here, like red pens, like an editor pen. And just some like fun stuff like that, and we've had so many people like share it out on social media, or they email and they're like, thank you. That along with a couple of other changes right there, like basically doubled our customer lifetime value. But this also but it's a cost, right? Because we have to like load back up on like mugs. And like when we need to buy more mugs, it's like $750 to buy more mugs, right? With like the minimum order for the personalized, for like the mugs with the logo on them. And so, we've just built that in, and, so like every 6 months, Sophia will be like, hey, mugs are going to be X. I'm like, great. It's there, right? We've got the budget. So it's just like, it just helps me answer these questions, so much easier.
You're not stressed about ordering the mugs. It's in the spreadsheet.
No, it's in the spreadsheet. Yeah. And we didn't spend anything for the last like 4 months. And so you add all of that together and boom, guess what? It's more than 750. So we're good. What else do we want to buy?
I would love you to do some coffee mug math. How much the ROI on the coffee mugs has been in terms of client retention, and get back to me.
That's astronomical. It's astronomical. I mean, if it was less than 100 to 1, I would be surprised.
Wow.
It's
That's a good
crazy.
coffee
I mean,
mug.
literally doubled our customer lifetime value. Like
Seriously.
that plus adding customers into like a shared Slack channel. Like
Right, yeah.
literally that swag package plus that doubled our customer lifetime value.
Swag and Slack. You need to put on the
Swag and
tagline.
Slack. That's right. I'll give a talk about that someday. And actually, I got that idea from my buddy Joey Coleman's book, Never Lose a Customer Again, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. I read that in like 2022. I actually met Joey in 2023 at a mastermind in Central America, but was on a call with him today actually. But it's a phenomenal book for agency owners. Like it's all about like customer success basically. And one idea there is like send a care package, and it's worked really well.
Now you're on the agency tips. We're nearly out of time, so I'm just going to ask you one last question. If you were to give any advice to another agency owner just getting started, or maybe they're scaling and maybe hitting a couple of roadblocks, what would be your main piece of advice to them that are trying to build out this thing?
Find someone whose skill set is the opposite of yours. Like I do not manage our editors and writers directly. Sophia does that. I am the ADHD, big picture, visionary, thinking 18 to 24 more months out, traveling all the time, entrepreneur. So, and like, I'm really good at identifying like, what does the process need to be? Where does it need to change? What do we need to build in order to make it happen? I'm that person. Sophia is the like boots on the ground, operate within the processes that have already been established person. So
your in-house person is just as important, really.
100%, 100%. Yep. And then one of the biggest things, and I just looked into this, one of the biggest things about running the fractional model is having what I call a well of talent. So I got lucky with this program out of Virginia that we've primarily hired out of. So it's just like people that we know are good, that are trained to do this stuff, that are available. We know where to find them, like all of that. So we're not spending like recruiting is not a cost for us, really. We just ask our editors, who do you know? Do you have friends who want work, who do what you do? Yes, great. Let's hire them. And we put them through a vetting process, do a paid test document, like all that sort of stuff. But just having that right there is really, really useful. So, you can recreate it by like reaching out to a bunch of like university programs and saying, hey, I want to hire your graduates, right? They're happy to refer you like good people, or building your own talent network like we've done, right? We have a bigger network that we can recruit people from. Like the more you can like centralize that like supply side, that lets you pull from them so that you never have to stop selling.
Love that. All right, cool. John, this has been so fun. Why don't you wrap it up and tell people where they can find you and find Editor Ninja?
Yeah, for sure. So Editor Ninja is just editorninja.com. If you're a B2B marketing leader, content leader, or B2B marketing agency producing content, would love to speak with you. And then best place to find me personally is on LinkedIn. Just search John Doherty Editor Ninja, something like that, and you'll find me. My profile photo currently is my face with it's like reddish orange in the background, Editor Ninja color. So kind of hard to miss, and I would love to connect with you there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Cheers.